All right, so welcome to today's industry talks. We're talking with Emre from Mina Protocol, which is kind of under O1 Labs. And the kind of topic and lecture that this kind of coincides with is our scalability lecture, cryptocurrency for the masses. So I think let's just start by just learning a little bit more about Emre, get some intros in, get some context. So Emre, if you could just intro us to everybody, that would be absolutely perfect. And we'll just kind of get right into it and just chat about everything.
Sounds good. Thanks, Nish and Liam for helping organize this. Let me also present my screen. Oops, looks like it's disabled. Can we enable screen sharing or should I just speak?
What are we?
Sorry, go for it now.
Sharing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I got it now.
Let's do it.
All right. Okay. So let me know if you all can see my screen. I will suspect you do.
That's perfect.
Quick intro about myself. My name is Emre. I head up business development and operations here at O1 Labs, which is a company that's incubated Mina Protocol, formerly known as Coda. We recently changed our name, so if any of you are following us under that. Just personally, I've been here for about 1.5 years now. Before that, I was at Coinbase, also doing business development, working on various different topics, such as stablecoins or custody, dApps, wallet. So that was also obviously an interesting time. Happy to chat about that as well if anyone's interested. And before that, I was for the most part at Intel, doing various other OG tech stuff.
Nice. Yeah. I think a great way to kind of frame this is maybe let's chat just a little bit about your background, what you've been up to, your story. And then we can kind of like I think the big question is, what is Mina? So I see you have a slideshow for this, but maybe just for a little bit, can we just maybe chat for a little bit about kind of what you're all about and what got you to Mina? Because just to start off, I'm kind of curious what you said that you were at Intel for quite a bit. So what kind of brought you over to the world of blockchain, and was it a transition? What got you hooked? Kind of how'd you find yourself at Mina then, in terms of just like some pure storytelling?
Yeah, it's funny. It's been a while since I told this. In 2017, a lot of people used to ask, like, "Oh my God, you were into crypto before people heard about it. How come?" But I guess it's no longer that early. So glad to kind of hear about that question again, because I think it matters, like what brings people to this area, because it's still early. I was at Intel. The thing I worked on most recently before I left was which is kind of relevant, was I was PMing basically a payments subsystem within this wearables initiative that Intel had. So that had to do mostly with NFC payments. So if you can,
Nice.
If you imagine how you can pay now with it, or Apple Watch or a couple other watches as well, that was kind of a platform we're trying to get off the ground. Obviously, like Intel was not successful in that, but as it wasn't with many things mobile. But that kind of introduced me to the world of payments and basically how complex and antiquated it was. Like if anyone's looked at like how the credit card schemes work and how issuance and all the settlement, it's like this like super meshed up system where
are there any sort of like crazy stories, examples that you look at and you just like cringe a little bit?
Wow, it's been such a long time. Well, like one thing that was always interesting to me was so I'm originally from Turkey, and born and raised there, and then moved to the US. And like to some people this is surprising, but like in Turkey, payments is quite advanced, actually, much more so than in the US. So it feels very intuitive. So you don't actually imagine it to be as complex. So when I moved to the US, obviously it was like, what the heck? I pay things with checks and paper and I have to mail them. Like, it's so weird.
Right.
But I didn't question it, like why was this weird? And as I was working on this product, like there's this, and you can Google this, but like there's this chart of like how the usual life cycle of a credit card payment. Like there's, I think, 9 intermediaries, like from settlement banks to issuing banks to merchant banks and like all the other like the card schemes and like issuers. So like
Yeah.
I was like just very surprised at how honestly complex and inefficient the whole thing was.
Mhm.
And you can kind of fill in the blanks, but that's ultimately like, as obviously as
Yeah.
I was saying about Bitcoin, like this notion of a fully digital payments infrastructure
Right.
kind of spoke to me more because, like I kind of felt the inefficiencies in the existing system, both as a
Yeah.
professional in the
Yeah.
space, also personally as well, having to, send payments across border.
Mhm.
So yeah, like as I was, looking to leave Intel, and I went to grad school right after that, so I had a 2-year gap. That kind of made
Nice.
me, look into the space professionally as well. So I actually interned at Ripple back in 2015, right
Wow.
before starting
Yeah.
grad school, and then continued to kind of be interested in the space throughout those 2 years, and then yeah, as I was leaving, Coinbase was growing again. So there was an opportunity to join their biz dev team, and for me, it was kind of a no-brainer because it was actually a weird time. Like
Yeah.
this was, I think I signed my offer in 2017, March or April, and
Yeah.
it was
That's a
still kind
crazy
of not
time.
like full bull market. And then so I was obviously excited just because I was curious about the space and about the company. But then
Yeah.
like I was slated to join or start work in July, and like in between those 4 months, everything suddenly changed. And I'm like,
Yeah.
can I join any?
Yeah.
Can I start any sooner? Or like
Yeah.
like can I finish school any
Right.
sooner?
Right.
Couldn't make it
Yeah.
work. But
That's
regardless,
crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think one question people might have is, okay, so first off, in the lectures, they've heard about Coinbase before, but you think about like a Coinbase biz dev slash ventures team. Why does Coinbase need a team like that, and what is it all about? And what were some kind of trends that you were kind of watching out for, passionate about? What was the time there like? That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So I joined when the company was about 100 people, and like there was, like I was the second biz dev employee. Obviously, like the more senior folks were involved in, like such
Right.
as Brian and a couple other of the early leadership people were involved in business oriented stuff. But biz dev basically meant like all of the company's banking relationships, other like partnerships across the board for stuff that have to do with like various functionalities such as like API partners, and a couple others. There were a
Right.
lot of early initiatives which are most of which are like no longer. And then over time, as the company started growing, this became also
Hmm.
about mergers and acquisitions. Like there was no like separate
Right.
corp dev team. Also, we also had to help with, setting up both new products as well as like like exploring certain strategic
Yeah.
initiatives. So I had the chance to work on the custody product as it was, just getting started, um, or on
Nice.
USDC, which is the stable coin that Coinbase started with a couple other firms in the
Mhm.
space, or
Right.
its wallet product, which at first was like this kind of the vision was like a WeChat for the world. So it even had a
Oh,
different name,
interesting.
Toshi. Wow, now that I think of it, it changes. And then
Yeah.
now obviously it's evolved into more of like a full-on wallet and a DApp, access point,
Right. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
helping
Adapt. Yeah.
navigate that whole space for the company. So, lots of different orthogonal spaces.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like really both obviously challenging because you're constantly changing gears, shifting gears, but also
Right.
like I had a post about this as well. It's kind of like a meme inside the company. It's like a crypto MBA, in that you get to like
That's dope.
see a lot of different stuff and learn of a lot of different stuff and make a lot of connections and really ramp up
Yeah.
into the ecosystem. So it was a very
Yeah.
interesting 2 years.
No, yeah, that's like the perfect time to be there. I mean, all these things that you're mentioning are such huge things at Coinbase and out of Coinbase right now, which is pretty awesome. So then from there, we can kind of continue the story. So after that, was Mina right after Coinbase, and what kind of got you there? Right
Yeah,
here to Mina. Then
it,
get right
it was
into
right
things.
after Coinbase. And what got me interested in it was two things. One of them was just personally, I realized I was more interested in like this whole like the infrastructure layer and like platform type businesses rather than being at a, I mean, Coinbase is a technology company, but it's also has a, obviously, like, its business model is as a
Yeah.
financial services company at some, in a regard. So
Right.
I just discovered I was more interested in this other stuff. And then Mina specifically, because, and we'll kind of get into this as I walk through the project, but
Right.
like, as you realize all the potential for the space and all the things that a company like Coinbase wants to do, yet being kind of, limited and hamstrung by the limited, infrastructure that we know we all have,
Yeah.
whether it's from a scaling point of view or like all the other technical inefficiencies of
Right.
the current popular blockchains. It made me realize, like, wow, there's like so much to do and we're still so early, and I want to be at one of these companies or projects that is having a go at, like, trying to make this a lot more efficient and scalable and all those things. And yeah, like, the team was also looking for someone to head up the business stuff, and obviously
Love
the
it.
team is a great fit. And so yeah, been here for a year and a half, and just we're very close to launching. So it's really exciting days over here at Mina as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, and just a quick call out to anyone as well as kind of attending right now. If you have any questions for Emery, this is your chance right now. It's definitely not just me. I'm kind of relying on y'all over here. If y'all have any questions about Emery's background, his story, what he's been up to, like, absolutely just drop it in the chat or the Q&A, and I'll be watching that. So I think, Emery, we've kind of learned a little about your story. That's perfect. So maybe let's kind of get right into it. I think, let me know if this is being answered right inside kind of the presentation you have for us, which can kind of just like, we'll just go through casually, to be honest. But scalability, to you, why does blockchain scalability matter? And to anyone at Mina, if you kind of start answering that as we start the presentation, I'm cool with that. But even just to harp home the point for anyone else here about why scalability matters, I think that'll be really, really important.
Yeah, I'll touch up on it at a high level, and then I'm happy to dig into some of the stuff over here, which, it's not like a very structured presentation, so we can jump around. But
totally good.
Like it, and I'm gonna use the highest level definition of scalability because it can mean a lot of different things. But I think at the core of it, it's to do with, like, how many people and how much functionality you can enable via a blockchain. And when I say via a blockchain, it implicitly also includes this notion of trustlessness, because at the end of the day, a public blockchain, the reason it exists is this peer-to-peer trustless exchange, right? Because otherwise, like, you can have Bitcoin and you can have all these companies like Coinbase, now PayPal and Visa and whatever, right? And they continue delivering the same functionality and they help the whole infrastructure scale. But again, you resort back to having to trust these intermediaries.
More trust,
yeah. So that's why, like, everyone, like, scalability has become this huge meme. And like, I'm not gonna go all fanatic and say, like, everything should be on chain and everyone should just be their own, like, paper wallet and whatnot. I think there's a balance there, but I think it's safe to say that we're still, like, we need to make these things more scalable, because otherwise, as we see now, like, we're all like, we actually have this chart. I don't think it's in the slides, but like where like I'm not going to be able to draw it, but like basically we end up swapping the logos of today's banks, right? Like Chase, Bank of America, whatever, with new logos, and like such as Coinbase or Infura or PayPal or whatever, right? So we gotta make sure that these systems are sustainable and resilient to enable as many people to work on them as trustlessly as possible.
Yeah, I like that. I like that you framed it in terms of people, because a lot of times people might, like, about scalability, you think, oh, transactions, just like this number. But then when you kind of like frame it as, I mean, we want the world to be working with blockchains and on the blockchain. So when you think about it in terms of, it's about allowing the world to interact with the blockchain, I think it's a cute way to put scalability. I think Kentaro put a quick other question trying about your story in the chat. He's kind of harking back to your college years, the years you were maybe in like university, grad school. He asked like what kind of clubs or projects were you involved in around college time? Did they relate to blockchain anyway, or was anything that kind of like planted those seeds that we've been talking about? Yeah, anything around that time to help
Yeah, well,
realize further?
yeah. Undergrad, I'm not going to speak about that because for most of it, Bitcoin doesn't even exist. So no blockchain involvement. But suffice it to say, I was always like interested in, just technology overall. In grad school, and I did my MBA on the East Coast, and yeah, I was definitely looped into the blockchain space. In fact, one fun fact was I remember hosting this panel. We had like a fintech club, which was also, kind of having the block or looking at the blockchain
Right.
stuff. Hosting this panel between like three folks. And I don't know if the names are going to ring a bell. One of them was someone from Ripple, like he was overseeing their regulatory strategy. Another one was this person called Meltem Demirors. She's like famous on Twitter and also like in one of the investment firms in crypto today. And then Kathleen Brightman, who ended up being one of the co-founders of Tezos. Back then, she was not at that project, like she hadn't started yet. And it was just like so interesting because everyone was super passionate, and I think that's when like Melton and Kathleen met, and then they became close friends after that. Anyway, so like the early formative years of not early, but like still formative years of crypto where kind of I had a chance to be involved in it in some ways, and like hosting other types of panels as well, and like writing a couple papers. So I think, and Berkeley, I think, is a huge testament to this, like both with what you all are doing at blockchain at Berkeley and other projects or funds or individuals that have come out of Berkeley. Huge opportunity just to jump in, right? Like with crypto, like there's no notion of a career in crypto or like a resume in crypto. Like it's all
crazy,
brand new. None of us really know what we're doing, so just jump right in. That's one thing I'd say.
Yeah, it's quite refreshing. I like that little point about like chasing and finding your story in blockchain. Even personally, when I think about this, I've spent my whole life kind of stuck within these notions of, oh, this is how I'm supposed to get a job. But now in blockchain at Berkeley, I hear about, maybe I don't need that. Maybe I can just do what I like really want to do, and like kind of continue to chase stuff. So it's really interesting to think about. And I like that you mentioned that it was these panels and speaker sessions that were your kind of exposure to blockchain in college, because to everyone here, that's what you're at right now. So this is the perfect place to start, which is pretty awesome. So thanks for that. So yeah, I think I don't see kind of any other questions out here. So I think it's a great time to kind of jump into Mina itself. We can kind of, I guess you've got a frame over here about how this maybe little presentation is going to go. We can run through it. We have a ton of things to talk about. So yeah, you can go ahead and take it away for us, and we'll just keep talking.
Awesome.
So tell us about Mina, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll try and make this short. And Niche,
No
like
worries.
if there's any questions,
Perfect.
just cut me off. Let's make this interactive.
Absolutely.
So Mina, the world's largest blockchain powered by participants. So I'll jump right into like why the core of our like development philosophy. And it comes from zero knowledge proofs or ZK snarks. ZK snarks are a specific, family of zero knowledge proofs, and why that's important. So this is like very high level, but one core thesis at the heart of Mina is this notion of game theoretic blockchains versus those that have cryptography at the core of it. And by the way, these are not mutually exclusive by any means, because every blockchain uses both of them, whether they're focused on one or the other. But basically, if you look at all the blockchains today, most of them have game theory at the core of it. And what I mean with this is, every new attendee or participant of the blockchain has to rerun every computation from the get-go. And basically, in order to trustlessly join a network, they have to, fully objectively, do everything from scratch. And what we're seeing is like this is hitting a bit of a asymptote. one example I'll give it is, or two examples. One of them is, the infamous Bitcoin scaling debate, where
Right.
it's not like Bitcoin, technically speaking, cannot process more transactions. It's just that obviously there was a lot of discussion, but core developers ended up not wanting to make it any more costly to run a full node. Another example is Ethereum, right? Vitalik himself and many others have publicly said that, look, Ethereum could run much, much faster if it wanted to. In fact, in test nets, it does, but there's just like tens of full nodes that then run the blockchain, right? Not, I think right now it's around 7 or 8,000. So and what we're seeing is, with whether it's ETH 2.0 or some of these other chains, although right now you can see some of them like, proclaiming much higher like TPS, transaction per second, or other numbers, TBD how sustainable their decentralization is, because it's very costly to run a full node, and
those trade-offs, right?
Yeah. So whereas with a cryptography centric chain, or what we call a succinct chain, and I'll touch upon this in a bit, the notion is we can leverage zero knowledge proofs to basically replace that huge game theory assumption to enable everyone to run full nodes much more, much cheaper and in a much more efficient way. And although this starts off slow, which is this orange curve here, we believe we're kind of at the precipice of like a hockey stick, because of the how fast the zero knowledge proof space is evolving. Again, this is like a crude chart of like number of new constructions, and they're not all of them are equivalent to each other, but it's easy to see that there's been a huge hockey stick growth in this era as well. So these are getting much more efficient, much faster, and much more powerful. So we believe, and so do a lot of, I guess, other zero knowledge proof centric projects in the space, that they are actually scheduled to overtake game theory based chains, although they might appear to be much faster now. Basically this enables zero knowledge proofs to solve a lot of the problems today. And we've identified three of them. One of them is verifiability. I kind of touched upon this, which is this notion of, everyone, having to, from scratch, verify each chain. Second is decentralized scalability, in that, there's this trade-off, which we discussed as well. And then the third is basically this issue of, everything right now being public forever on any blockchain, right? So the minute you put any data there, it's there forever. And, your whole privacy is violated, as soon as someone associates your public key with a real life identity. And we believe zero knowledge.
And I guess, I guess privacy, just this last point, is a pretty interesting one that people might not have heard about too much. We do understand that a lot of blockchains are public, but do you have some interesting stories, or just like stories to help us think about, why does privacy matter on a blockchain? Obviously it matters so much, but do you have any interesting kind of stories to share to help kind of like contextualize this sort of point?
Stories. Let's see.
Not even personal, but just like to help visualize a scenario where you're like, oh right, we need privacy in blockchains.
Well, I'll give a hypothetical example.
Because
there's no app that enables you to do this, but the reason is this hypothetical scenario. Like I'm imagining many of you have heard like DeFi, or like all these decentralized financial apps on Ethereum right now. And many of them are like, for speculation purposes right now, but like imagine having a DeFi app where it can take your credit score or your bank information and give you, unsecured loans or much better terms. Would you use it knowing that the minute you put your salary information or your credit score in there, it's there forever, right? It's some might say, yeah, sure, whatever, I don't care. But many would not. Like there's a reason why all of these credit bureau hacks or other sorts of like hacks are such a big issue, because it's ultimately your financial privacy and otherwise as well. So I think that's one of the reasons why some of these very high potential use cases have failed, and there's many others as well, but have failed to evolve beyond like this speculative use case right now.
Yeah, exactly. And when I think about privacy, being someone that has kind of followed DeFi for a little bit, it is DeFi that originally comes into my head. There were a lot of kind of cool stories and articles written about this idea of in the kind of mempool of Ethereum, to be able to view people's transactions, to front run people's transactions, to be able to view if you have a trading strategy on DeFi, it's your trading strategy for a day until someone else kind of steals it. So it's kind of very interesting to think about. And I'm just going to drop a very famous article from this kind of fall/summer. It's a really fun read. Just kind of bringing up the idea of maybe we need a little bit of privacy in these blockchains. So yeah, great answer, and that was a fun little side discussion. But anyways, we can go on, and I hope like we're mentioning kind of like ZK Snarks, ZK first. Are we going to kind of get a little overview about that in this slideshow, because that isn't exactly something that people are familiar with, or do we want to do that right now? Just before we move on.
Let me go on to this next slide, and I'll also explain a bit about what zero-knowledge proofs are, because we don't actually dig into it here. But let me start with like how these cryptographic techniques can help achieve some of the issues that I just highlighted. Well, actually, maybe before that, it is better to talk about what they are, as you suggested. So zero-knowledge proofs in general have been around for or since 1985, I believe. So they're by no means new. But up until recently, with the advent of blockchains, they failed to, I guess, find a lot of or a great use case area or a solution that they can help solve, or a problem that they can help solve. And what blockchains, though, they have kind of found this interesting fit with both privacy as well as scalability. But what are they, right? So a zero-knowledge proof is a mathematical proof that basically says that a computation, no matter how big, how complex it is, was done correctly as intended by the party that made the computation. So, for example, think of kind of an unwieldy use case, such as a excuse me, a supercomputer making a weather forecast, right? And this maybe doesn't have that many consequences. Well, for some it does, for sure. But it's running for half a day, and it's a supercomputer. It's like millions of dollars, and at the end of the day, it gives you certain forecasts, and you kind of take it at face value, right? What if instead of that, it also produced a proof on the side that you can verify, using open source algorithms that says, okay, this computer did this, ran this type of an algorithm on this type of a data set, and it did it correctly. I did it as intended, right? So that's kind of the very high level notion. There's mathematical ways to explain it, which I'm sure I'm going to butcher. There's many like resources online. It's funny like how like even after a year and a half, I'm failing to articulate it as succinctly as I'd like to.
I think if we try to explain what ZK kind of proofs are, it'll take like this entire session. But I think the way I always like to think about it is it's that cave analogy, right? Are you familiar? Could you explain that? I actually might butcher that, but I think that might really help people, because the bottom line, and I think what we need to know about ZK proofs right now, is just that they are like small kind of data preserving, privacy preserving proofs that are just awesome proofs that let you do cool stuff, is like all we need to care about. So they're just a really awesome technology. Did you want to kind of build on that in any way? Do you know kind of how to explain the analogy for us?
The cave analogy, it's been a while. I'm blanking on it now, but there's another one. There's actually a video, and it's by some of the folks at A16Z. Where
I can quickly find it.
If you can link it to that, I think that's the one that spoke to me. But obviously the cave analogy is also popular. But basically where it says like, if an audience knows certain information or certain limitations of the data that's being input to a computation, then if you run the computation enough times, it's proved that without any doubt that you can trust that the computation was done correctly. Again, I kind of can't say the same thing, but I strongly urge to watch the video. I think it gives you a much more intuitive to understand it.
Yeah, I can't find any of the videos yet, so maybe we can put that in the chat, but I just quickly found Wikipedia. Yes, like the Alibaba cave analogy, which is cool. But I see a pretty fun question in the chat, actually. Kind of a little bit harkening back to the privacy aspect of things. So Tanya asks, Where would you draw the line between privacy and the value transparency of blockchain? Which is an interesting question. It's an interesting trade-off to think about. People often tout the transparency and public nature of blockchain sometimes as something that as kind of a positive, but how do we kind of, yeah, weigh the differences, weigh the two sides? I'm curious about your take on this.
Yeah, good question. I'd say it's rather philosophical, right? Because one can argue that in the physical realm, if you think of cash, right, paper cash, it's super private, and unless it's like marked radioactively, like it's impossible to track. Well, let's assume it's impossible. I'm sure there's other ways, but like I pay someone privately, and I look around and make sure no one's watching me, and I pay them, and that's private, right? But if I don't take the right precautions, then it can also be public, right? And that others can see me making that same payment. I'd say that's maybe one way to look at it, right? It's like having that option to be able to make it private. But maybe the default can be public because yes, for many reasons, there's value in having these things be transparent. In that regard, like Zcash, one of the earliest projects that use zero knowledge proofs, I think has it in a way and done correctly. And it also provides them with certain advantages from regulatory perspective as well. So that's another rabbit hole. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like it was a pretty cool question, and it got me thinking before I kind of passed it to you. And like, I feel like, in my opinion, it's almost like the key factor here is that with kind of blockchains and blockchain-based financial tools, it's kind of verifiability that we really care about, right? The fact that like, okay, I know that like my transaction goes through, and perhaps the idea that anyone else can check as well. So it's a little different than maybe something like transparency. I think what a blockchain can add is that public verifiability. So even if you have a private transaction, perhaps the ability to verify one way or another, which is what ZK proofs actually help kind of like make happen and empower, which is kind of cool. So that was a good question. I also linked to Zcash in the chat just for anyone's kind of reference. But yeah, we can kind of move on. So we know about these ZK proofs. Okay, they're cool proofs. We know about these ZK snarks. What are ZK snarks? And like, yeah, let's get into it. You got it.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess maybe you've already read the slides, but when applied correctly, zero knowledge proofs do actually present solutions to these three problems that we had identified, right? And maybe let me jump to how we use them such that we can solve these problems. Basically, there's two important features of Mina. If you think of any of the existing blockchains, again, let's use a simple example, Bitcoin. You might have heard about people talking about the size of the Bitcoin blockchain. It's like 300 gigabytes. And why does it have a size, right? Because what gives value to any piece of data on the Bitcoin blockchain is its history, right? Like since the Genesis block, what transactions have happened and who owes someone, who's paid someone else how much, and like that, all of that, when you sum it up and bring it to the state right now in the most recent block, that's what has value. And so you need to be able to verify that from the Genesis. But this size of it makes it unwieldy, right? And 300 gigabyte may not seem that much, right? Like there's petabytes of data around. But if you think of the fact that anytime you need to use this thing trustlessly, which is the entire intent of public blockchains, you need to download 300 gigabytes of data, compute it, and then, such that you catch up to the chain. And like one data point on this is some Bitcoin developers do this test every year where they like use a $2,000 desktop machine to see, how long it takes to connect to the Bitcoin blockchain. And last year, I think it was 6 hours. So it's not too much, right? Like someone can do it, but like if you just want to pull up your phone and like connect to the Bitcoin blockchain trustlessly, you're just not going to be able to do that. So what we do instead is we, in a way, actually, the Mina blockchain, it looks very similar, but on top of it, we add this feature where we use recursive zero knowledge proofs, which is to say, we basically, the analogy is for anyone who's in CS or tangent fields will will know what I mean. But like it's like taking a photo of a photo of a photo of a photo. So basically, you're always proving that the previous proof was valid, and you're adding it to the most recent block. And what this enables is that Mina basically has full node capabilities with only 13 kilobytes of data. And that always stays the same size, and it never grows. And it's it's the same size no matter how old or how high throughput or how large or how functional the Mina blockchain is. And what that enables, as we've discussed, is for anyone to actually be able to pull up their phone and connect to the chain trustlessly. So we feel that to be very important because at the end of it, blockchains are all about trustless access, as we talked about. The second feature, real quick, is this also enables anyone to take part in consensus, which is also important. So Mina is a proof of stake chain for those of you that are familiar with the different families. And it can enable anyone to join the consensus and take part in it.
Right. That's pretty awesome. I think quite naturally, I think there are going to be two questions, one for each kind of side of things. First off, for the size thing, I mean, like even when I think about just like people might just how what is these 13 kilobytes? Are we not losing any data? What does the data mean and do for us here? Just how? I think it's just like quite mind blowing to think about it first. And then also, I guess a side thing, why haven't people done this before? I mean, why isn't Bitcoin doing this? Like theoretically, why isn't Ethereum moving towards something like this? Why did we not think about this before? Was it really that zero knowledge wasn't in a good place at that time? So yeah, I would love. I think for the first question, there's a broader answer, but what does the data mean? What are we actually storing? And then also, next, like what's the story? Why is this not here yet before? Why is Mina almost the first to do this? Yeah, just curious first questions for that. I feel like
those are great questions. So yeah, first of all, when anyone hears about this the first time, and I ask the same thing, I'm like, holy shit, it's like you compress a file and then you can unzip it or uncompress it or whatever, and the data is there. No, it's not like that. So as I think I mentioned, like with Mina, it's weird in that the underlying blockchain is actually pretty similar to any other blockchain in that if you run a specific type of node, you basically store the entire blockchain in the same way. What it does is with these recursive proofs is to give the option of joining the chain trustlessly by only downloading a 13 kilobyte piece of data. Because what this data is tells you when you verify it is that, hey, look, I have a blockchain, which its most recent state is this hash number, where I have proven that all the blocks up until then have been calculated and processed correctly, and all the consensus has run correctly. There are no like this is the right fork of it. So like it checks for all the blockchain's consensus rules and all the transaction rules. And it tells the user that you can trust this latest state that you have. And all of that is in this 13 kilobyte piece of data. With other blockchains, what you need to do to get to the same result is, again, download 300 gigabytes of data, run the verification yourself with the get-go. Yes. So it's not like we compress all the data and you can uncompress it and have all the data. That would be even more magical. Maybe one day some other cryptography enables that.
That's very Silicon Valley Pied Piper.
Exactly. Yes, Pied Piper. This tells you that, like, let's say the only thing you want to check is what is my account balance right now? That happens with the starting kilobyte piece of data. If you wanted to ask, just being open, like, what was my balance 5 days ago, right? Then, then you're not going to be able to do that just with 30 kilobytes of data. Then what you're going to be doing is like, either you would have had to run been a node on the blockchain at that time and have all the data, or you can ask for it from other people. So it doesn't give you historical data magically, but that's that should not be the role of everyone that joins the blockchain anyways.
Right. that makes sense. So yeah, rather, yeah, that makes sense. So like it's not like it's basically lowering the limit to be a full node for the blockchain and be able to like do what a full node does. So while some nodes might have like might be able to kind of be accountable for a larger state of the blockchain, like people think, okay, for full nodes, there are different types of full nodes, obviously, but in Bitcoin, like, oh, okay, you might have to store a lot, like to be like a kind of archival full node, as they like to say it. But now you're just lowering the limits, which makes sense. So then, kind of the second question, why, like, yeah, that
Yeah.
I think you understand. But yeah,
Yeah. What, like, why is no one else doing this? Well, there's
yeah, pretty
maybe
much.
two answers. I'm sure there's more as well, but one of them is that this is all very cutting edge stuff, right? I mean, without, trying to be too humble, like we have one of the best teams in the field, and have like Mina's like recursive zero knowledge proof was this first one in production. We created a new construction just from scratch using some of the other advancements in the space. So like we're pushing the frontier, and it's also like putting enabling a blockchain that can do this isn't just about like, oh, you just like have this additional function that just produces this proof on the side. The entire blockchain, including like its hash functions and its transaction structuring and all of that, has to be designed in a way that enables this. That it takes a lot of work. In fact, our team has been working on this for almost 3 years, about 2.5 years at this point. And then the second part is, kind of related to the first answer. It's not like you can just tap this onto an existing blockchain, because that
Yeah,
entire blockchain has to be designed with this in mind.
right.
Not to say, Bitcoin or Ethereum cannot get there one day, but we're all seeing like how hard it is to even make the simple updates to any of these chains, and this is quite
Yeah,
a massive it would basically be a new chain. It's a lot. It would be a lot of work and a lot of coordination, and that's why a new
right.
chain is required as far as we can tell.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then kind of next on the kind of second category of things, okay, unlimited participation. Once again, a very similar kind of comparison question for people. We say, okay, no cap on the number of validators. You look at something like Ethereum, a 2B proof of stake chain, and you're like, oh, okay, they have certain caps. Or like if you look at like Cosmos and Tendermint over here, like, okay, certain cap. Why do they have caps, and why do we not need caps here on the number of validators? We might be getting a little like too low, but just very like conceptually, um, how is it that now, okay, unlimited consensus, that's great.
Yeah,
Similar
yeah.
type of question. Yeah.
Yeah, and like in this field, we're not the only one. There's other blockchains that don't have a cap on the number of validators or block producers. So I'll just be like transparent on that. What differentiates us is like the requirements to be a block producer are very low comparatively.
Right.
Like certain other ones, I'm not going to name names, will like have $10,000 machines that need to do it, etc. Which one can argue that's an approach, that's a design choice. It's not one we've made because
Right.
we've made it as inclusive as possible. But basically, what leads to this feature is which consensus mechanism you use. So there's two families of consensus mechanisms. One is what's called Byzantine fault tolerant or BFT type consensus mechanisms, and those are the ones that for example, as you said, Tendermint or a bunch of other ones use, and they have a cap on the number of validators, which is usually around 100. And the trade-off is, on the positive side, they are available and more battle tested, and secondly, they have much higher or much lower latency, and much higher guarantees in some features. This is where my know-how starts getting a bit mushier.
Yeah.
And then the second is what's called probabilistic consensus mechanisms, where you usually don't have a cap. The advantage is there's a lot more people that can make it so it's more decentralized, and also it can usually stand up to attacks from a higher portion of the consensus nodes.
Right. Right. Makes sense. So then Mina falls into the second category, I'm seeing.
Yes, so we use
Okay,
variant of this mechanism called Ouroboros, which is what the Cardano
right,
project
right.
came up with. Our variant is called Ouroboros Samasica, which we had to change a lot basically to be able to use it in the succinct setting. So yeah.
Right. Nice, nice, perfect. Yeah, just the idea of non-BFT with proof of stake originally like might have confused me at first, but that's a side thing. But that's perfect. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So I think I don't see any other kind of questions in the chat. As always, drop your questions in. No question is dumb enough. I mean, the questions I asked were just pure reactions and sanity checks. So yeah, we'll continue to take questions, but I think next you can kind of move us along, Emery,
Sure.
as to what's next.
What's next? Yeah, so this basically covers how and we kind of talked about these, but maybe one thing to note here is why, like, why this approach solves decentralized scalability. And basically the reason is we kind of covered this, but if you look at Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other chains, the reason for why there isn't more throughput, transaction throughput supported isn't because it's technically not possible. It's an economic reason,
Mm,
right? Like the more transactions you support, the more costly it gets to run a full node, and as a result, you have fewer full nodes, so it becomes more centralized, the chain, and you don't want to do that. Whereas with Mina, because the full node is always a fixed size, and as I said, it doesn't change how many transactions with how many transactions the chain supports. So you can basically run as much TPS or other means of throughput as you want. Now, this doesn't happen magically all of a sudden because you need to optimize the chain, and there's other limitations such as this being a truly decentralized network, which creates a lot of peer-to-peer networking issues. But these are all stuff that they're engineering challenges that we're hammering out one by one. So that's why this approach brings up a solution to this infamous trade-off, sometimes also known as the scalability trilemma, that has haunted blockchain for a while now.
mm. Yeah. So that's great. I think right now might be the perfect time to kind of transition over into like a separate set like sort of discussion around Mina. So okay, we've dug in. We know okay, here are the kind of key points about why Mina is different. Why is it built different? Why is it better? But right now, um, I think a big question that might pop up in people's heads is okay, there's Mina. What can we do with Mina now? What are you noticing that's being built on Mina? Are people kind of moving over? Like people kind of in the real world in blockchain right now, people like have this kind of notion of okay, when you're working with decentralized apps, like just say Ethereum. Ethereum is the big name here, but what are we kind of seeing in the kind of transition over the idea of like Mina being like an alternate better blockchain? Yeah, just hit us with what you're seeing on Mina and what Mina can do for decentralized applications.
Yeah, great segue. Did I send you this slide before? I forget. But yeah, that's like what I had coming up next. But first of all, like on this notion of like Mina being the succinct chain, um, by itself, right? And you were kind of alluding to this. It's cool, it's interesting, but like what does it do? And by itself, like even if didn't have anything else, we believe this is like the way, like much more sustainable design that may not appear like an issue right now, but as blockchains grow, as more people use them, this is going to become much more acute. So we believe over the long term, this is going to have a lot of advantages. But the beauty of building or having a blockchain that has zero knowledge proofs at its core is that it can do so much more. And this brings us to what we call snaps. So snaps are snark-powered applications. And this is kind of our answer to this issue of private applications or every application being fully public on these blockchains. But by using zero knowledge proofs, the smart contract layer or application layer on Mina enables applications that can use off-chain or data that's available on the web in a trustless way and in a private way. The reason this is this way is because you can basically get data from any public source out there that has a cryptographic signature to it, such as an HTTPS signature. You can verify that it came from the source that it claims it came from, whether this is Google or your bank or the government. And then you can run a computation on this data, prove that you ran the computation correctly, and then pass that on to the app on Mina, such that the application verifies that and does its magic with it. So there's a couple of examples here, and I'll just focus on one of them, such as zero collateral loans, where imagine as I gave an example, you want to use a DeFi app, but you want to leverage your credit score because you worked your ass off 30 years in the world, you build a credit score, or you have a great salary, but you don't want to you don't have a lot of savings, you don't want to put like a collateral to get a loan or on a DeFi app or whatever. What you can do with snaps on Mina is you can go, for example, to a Credit Karma, right, which has a easy to use website. You can log into your account there, and basically by using an application on your phone or on your computer, you can verify that your credit score there matches certain criteria, such as, let's say it's above 700, right? Pick up your criteria. You prove that that data comes from Credit Karma, has been signed by them, and you prove that your data meets the criteria. You pass along that proof to an application, a Snap on Mina, and basically apply for a loan that way. What the lender in this case, sees in exchange is that there's a user that has a trusted credit score that meets the criteria that lender disclosed, and verify that proof, and basically give you the loan. So this is just basically something that's not possible with any blockchain today, and you can see several examples here, but there's so much more that can be done. It's just this whole notion is so new that once, and we've already started building a couple demos on these with partners. One thing to note, maybe we didn't disclose this at the beginning, but Mina is not has not launched yet, so we're in a public testnet phase, and we'll talk about that in a bit as well. These are still super early days, so there's a lot that can be imagined that we can't even think of right now, especially once Mina is available on mainnet.
Right, that makes sense. This is cool, and I think there are a lot of really cool names here. Okay, we think about DEXs, decentralized exchanges. Okay, collateral loans. Thankfully, for those without context, we actually have a lecture on DeFi this Thursday. I'm actually going to be a lecturer there along with my little and blockchain Repton. So you'll be able to look forward to that lecture. And these are all really cool. These are really cool, kind of like little use cases that are pretty hyped. So I guess Emre, as a side note, we have the kind of launch coming up. What honestly for you as the guy kind of handling biz dev / strategy at Mina, what's your strategy to get DeFi applications who are oftentimes on Ethereum to get them to come consider Mina, build on Mina as well? What's your strategy there to kind of build the community? Because oftentimes people look at like something called perhaps like the network effect of Ethereum. But what's the strategy right now to make sure that these awesome applications pop up on Mina and kind of pop off and are popular and well used and in great ways? What's the kind of strategy there?
Yeah, it's not that complicated. It's basically to find the teams that want to build real value, and basically enable them with some of this unique functionality to deliver that real value, right? Because again, unfortunately right now, DeFi for the most part is limited to crypto traders, right? Like, yes, there's a lot of lending going on, but it's basically for traders that want to short or take leverage or whatever. So it's not actually seeing, as much as I'd love to, and I worked a lot on this during my Coinbase days, and it's been multiple years by this point, and we're still not there. And the reason is because of these certain missing features that I covered, and we believe we have an answer to that, and that's been resonating with some of the initial conversations that we've been having. That being said,
Yeah.
we're still early. As I said, we haven't even launched mainnet yet, so it's going to take some time.
Right.
But it's been very promising.
Yeah. Awesome. Love that. Um, yeah. I think all I can say is just like looking forward to that, because it seems like this is kind of a whole different lens into the idea of scalability, and it's kind of like a breath of fresh air, which is pretty awesome. I'll let you kind of take us away onto the next
Yeah.
part. Oh, we have a quick question in the chat actually.
Yeah.
Corey asked, "How can I get involved with Mina?" So there are many ways. I'll let you take it, Emery.
Great. Why don't I rush through the couple remaining slides, and at the end we'll talk about that, how to get involved.
Let's do it.
So, basically a quick snapshot of the ecosystem here. There's like three main stakeholder categories. First one is O1 Labs, which I'll just summarize it here. As I mentioned, it's the startup that incubated Mina Protocol that I'm also an employee at. We're a team of about 30 people, formerly based in San Francisco, now around the world and on Zoom. So that's, that's perhaps one way, someone that's graduating or wants to intern at could get involved. Then there's the Mina Foundation, which is basically an independent nonprofit foundation that's going to be the entity launching the blockchain and coordinating many of the efforts going forward. And then there's our Genesis community, which is the broader community. So let me actually jump right to that real quick. Yes, so we formed, so as I said, Mina being this very lightweight chain and very decentralized, community for us is like super important. And not just because, some of you may know, like people say like, oh, community is like the most competitive thing a blockchain can build. Sure, obviously, but also because like this is a truly decentralized and public blockchain, so these are the folks that are going to run it. So that's why we've been investing on this from for years at this point. And we launched our public testnet a year and a half ago, and basically we've been including our earliest community members into this what we call like the Googlers of crypto type community, where it's the best of the best. And we also give out token grants to these folks, not just incentivize them, but for them to also run block producers on the network when it launches. And they've already been doing successfully on the test nets. It's there's some numbers here. We believe we are, as of now, like the largest public testnet that's happened, with more than 1,100, I think that's 1,200 by now, testnet users, like users that are connected to the chain, a community in more than 7,000 members. So it's growing. There's many ways to get involved. One of them is we just actually recently launched this University Ambassador Program for universities around the world, to both be considered for the Genesis program, and also start communities in your university. So you can see a link there. If I don't know, I don't think I have access to the chat here, so if one of you don't mind typing it in, that would be
just
great.
dropped it in.
Awesome. And then we also have, here we go, like, yeah, our Discord server is like where like basically everything happens. Especially if you want to like get involved, make sure to get on there. You can ping me, you can ping other members of the community. One thing, you'll see, and check it out for yourself, but I think it's very fascinating how helpful and inclusive the community is, especially when compared to some of the other blockchain projects. That's just something we're really proud of. So I urge you all to go in and check out for yourselves. And yeah, this is actually also the end of the presentation, so we can just chat free form from here on.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, let's do it. All right, I'm glad to see Corey in the chat kind of joining in, enjoying things around there. And that's perfect. I mean, we have all the links here. To be honest, yeah, in my experience, literally going to a community's Discord and just chatting, getting involved is like, it's just so the best way to just get connected with them. So Corey, if you see that Discord link, it could be great to kind of join in there. So that's perfect. I think, yeah, Emre, if you want, we can just kind of stop sharing your screen and we can just maybe get a couple more questions in from the audience, get some wrap up going. That'll be perfect. So I'm going to give it 30 seconds actually, just for anyone in the audience to hit us with any questions for you, for us. And then otherwise I'll take it one way or another. Are you able to see the chat now?
Now I have access to it.
Yeah, I think Corey just asked a little question in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, Nina. I can see me. Yeah, Naval's an early investor, like in our seed round, both directly himself as well as through his venture fund. So yeah, obviously he's been a huge supporter, and he saw something in the project and the team, so he decided to back it up so early. So yeah, that's how he's involved. See, there's another question. How much experience is required in the blockchain space to join the internship program? Not a lot. So I'm guessing with the internship program, you meant like interning at O1 Labs. I need to double check, but I'm not sure if we have like posted internship roles right now, but we're a pretty loose team. So I'd suggest you reach out via that email again, contact@o1labs.org. If you're interested, just put in, hey, I love what your major is and what type of internship you want to do, and we'll get back. But not no experience required. We just want smart, talented people to join the team. In fact, like majority of our team, like half of our team doesn't have like direct experience in the space.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think what I've learned a lot in the DeFi, crypto blockchain job search is to literally just reach out. So now you have an email, anyone who's attending to literally just hit up. You have Emre as well. I'm sure Emre can like drop a couple like Twitter links or anything like that. So yeah, like great ways to get connected. Okay, Corey's asking if we can drop the Discord link if you have that by any chance. We could put that in the chat, but we can find it regardless. Perfect. Yep, I'm gonna give it a second for some more questions as well. Do you have anything you wanted to talk about, Mary, as well? I mean, it doesn't just have to be me asking the questions. Any questions for anyone in the chat?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to hear what type of projects or new blockchains, specifically interest people these days, because there's, you've been following, there's a lot of new blockchains, especially that launched the past year.
Yeah. So. Let's hear it. All right, let's get some buzz in the chat. Let's hear about what y'all been learning about. I'm just a huge kind of DeFi guy, so I'm just gonna drop names there if I have to, but I think I want to hear what others have to hear and say. I know I see Kentaro in the chat, so Kentaro, if you have anything that you've been watching especially, I would definitely appreciate it.
I guess
I'll start with
grabbing dinner at the same time.
Yep. Corey mentioned Kusama. Yeah, that the entire kind of Web3 Polkadot ecosystem is like pretty amazing.
Yeah, I haven't been. I know like some Polkadot in general uses also like they also use a variant of Ouroboros, by the way. But beyond that, yeah, I haven't been keeping tabs on them that much. But yeah, they got it out, and it's been a lot of hype. So
yeah. One thing on campus that I actually help run is our blockchain accelerator. So like the blockchain of Berkeley helps run a Berkeley blockchain accelerator, which is kind of cool. And in the latest cohort, the protocol with the most like number of teams building on was kind of Polkadot, which is really cool to see.
Really?
So they're pretty awesome. Yeah. Which is really cool. It was kind of them, Near, and then Ethereum was kind of rounding us off as like the three big projects, which is interesting. I hope to see some projects on Mina at some point, which would be pretty cool. So we should talk about that.
So do I.
Yeah.
Yeah, and someone mentioned Audius, I think. Yeah.
I think it's Audius. That
was awesome.
To be honest, I was gonna mention Audius as the kind of thing that I was checking out. I've been uploading stuff there. Seeing how Audius is kind of starting to build around and near Solana. Obviously, I think you mentioned Solana, like one of those other blockchains that's really going for hyper scalability. So different kind of trade-offs there, which is pretty cool. But yeah, Audius is really awesome. Yeah, and so Corey, I see you kind of asked about Near. I think Near is like, I think they're great. I think they're like one of the kind of smartest bunches of people that I've been able to like meet with the accelerator. We kind of um, had conversations with them around running this course next spring that's on Berkeley's campus actually, to build on different blockchains. And Near's pretty awesome. I think I actually did a little deep dive on their sharding mechanism over the summer. So Nightshade, I think they're chasing scalability in a very kind of like very respectable, very honest way. So I'm just kind of like, I think they recently just almost got a forced launch, right? So it's nice to see them kind of continuing on. I believe in them. So yeah, yeah. Emery, any thoughts on kind of Near, Solana, other kind of
Yeah, I
blockchain
mean,
ecosystem?
that we all consider them our peers. In fact, like near,
Yeah,
especially near Solana, and we have, I don't know, but had our offices like within 3 blocks of each other. So we used to visit
nice.
each other all the time. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Solana, for example, I see them as like our complete opposite, in a way.
Hmm.
We even had
Yeah,
this podcast with Anatoly on the Blockchain Debate podcast, which was really fun. And
nice.
that kind of taught me a lot in
Yeah.
terms of like some of the assumptions they're making and we're making and how they're, as I said, completely opposite.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I think, yeah, because I guess if you think about it, the one big thing in terms of like assumptions is first off, they have like some crazy requirements, right? In terms of like, oh, to run a node, you need like X, like a GPU or something like that. Are there other like um kind of like where do you see the opposites kind of um showing in between you and Solana? Because I think a
yeah,
lot of people have Solana in their minds right now, so it's nice to compare.
yeah. Well, let's see. I hope I don't butcher this and, then Anatoly
Yeah,
doesn't come and haunt me. But
totally chill, yeah.
I there's two main ones, I'd say. And one of them is, so basically, as you said, like they're I think their whole focus is on their consensus mechanism, right? And I mean they've done an amazing job with it. And I can even see us using something similar in some distant future. Just because
Yeah,
there is I think fairness to say like consensus is best left to professionals or people willing to invest in that.
right.
And yeah, like if you want a really performant chain, that's a valid approach to have. Their one assumption is that all proof of stake chains have this weak subjectivity assumption, which basically says, what they say is like trust on first use or something, which is basically, you know, you trust the first node that you connect to, which is a big assumption, which is
Yeah,
definitely not one we're making. We're on the exact opposite, right? Like we verified the whole chain for you a year ago. And we don't believe that all proof of stake chains are like have to have weak subjectivity. In fact, we don't. And by the way, like this notion of weak subjectivity is butchered as well. Like there's so many nuances within itself. And
yeah,
it's a range as well. And yeah, like one other thing I think is that they I don't think have considered at all like this notion of a full node, right? And they say this outright as well. They don't think it's important. We believe the opposite, and I think empirical data shows that people think it is important because otherwise Bitcoin
mhm,
and Ethereum would have scaled, right?
yeah,
But they haven't, and so we think that it's really important, and that's why we like our entire chain is built on the notion of everyone can and should be a full node.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, it's very polar opposite projects, but
yeah.
obviously
That's
like,
pretty
by the
awesome.
way, like huge respect. They've also executed like hell,
Yeah,
which is amazing to see.
yeah. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, like they're really kind of seizing their moment right now. I mean, Serum is like like the biggest side kind of Ethereum DeFi use case which people talk about these days, and Serum has its own debates around it. But yeah, it's pretty interesting and kind of watch. And I like that little point how you say like kind of we're all kind of friends, comrades within this. I think that's something that kind of separates the community right now from like even some things like even when you look at like centralized, like I guess you think about finance, you look at centralized finance, you'll never see like like someone kind of talked about this, you'll never see like JP Morgan and Wells Fargo like collaborating on a product together. But with my DeFi discussions, I bring like one week I brought Aave in, Mark from Aave, and then the next week I brought Compound in, and they both have so much love for each other, and they're just connections everywhere, and they're like, yeah, we'd rather work with each other because we're so early right now. Is that kind of how you see things as well for kind of like layer ones? And I guess that goes into like a bigger question of this whole idea of like interoperability, and kind of what are your thoughts there? I think it's a very obvious thesis. We love interoperability, but any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of collaboration and just overall camaraderie, as you said.
Right.
I mean, yes, we're all at the end of the day, by the way, like I'll be like honest, we're all competing to some extent over like a pie, but also the larger goal should be extending that pie. And in that way, it's we all got so much to learn from each other. So yeah, as I said, like, we used to kind of visit each other, and, some folks, like, we always share information, and are in touch with each of these projects. So yeah, as you said, that's something that's really cool when compared to more traditional industries. And yeah, like, actually, this notion of interoperability is interesting just because it's become very weird in that I'm sure some of y'all have like heard of like layer twos on Ethereum, all these side chains. But then each of these new layer ones are also building bridges to Ethereum and to each other. Well, in that world, what is a layer one? What is a layer two, right? It all gets very, just the borders get very confusing. Which I think, this, for example, whole notion of like Cosmos or Polkadot, like being all these like,
Right.
I forget what each of they're called, but like all these chains that can natively talk to each other. Yeah, it's cool, but also we're seeing every other chain start to go in that direction. Like, the more we learn of how to create bridges in the most trustless way possible, they're all eventually going to converge to that. So yeah, basically, like, it's kind of like APIs between all these chains, but done in the right way, not in a trustful way, but trustlessly.
Yeah.
So that's also one thing that
so I guess how is Mina kind of concretely addressing or thinking about like the trend of like, okay, let's just build a bunch of bridges? Is Mina looking to build a lot of bridges as things kind of build out, or what's the kind of philosophy to kind of interoperate, or is there
Yeah,
philosophy to interoperate? Yeah,
we have a huge advantage, right? Because our full node is 13 kilobytes and it's really easy to verify. So creating a bridge to Mina is a very easy task. And yeah, we're going to be announcing some grants soon on this, and are going to invest some of our resources as well. But when compared to other blockchains, to build a trustless bridge, it's a lot of work because you basically have to verify the chain. Like, if you want to do it the right way, you have to verify one chain in the other, as if you're running a full node inside of the other chain. Does that make sense? So that's why, like, people have had to do shortcut solutions where, like, I think the way either Serum or someone is doing is like have another, basically a chain where there's like these nodes that independently verify and like they come to consensus. And so it's kind of getting weird, but that's where we have a huge advantage. So yeah, I look forward to hopefully having many bridges to Mina.
Exactly. That's awesome. I saw a quick question, basically kind of paraphrasing. I think it's kind of around, okay, we expect very quickly there'll be a lot of nodes on Mina and validators on Mina. So you did mention this quickly, like how the trade-off and the benefit that Cosmos goes for by having, or sorry, Tendermint goes for by having limited number of validators is the latency issue. Achyut is kind of curious about the latency factor for Mina itself. If there are going to be a lot of nodes, how is syncing going to work? And yeah, is there a latency issue?
Great question. We've faced challenges in this. We had a good number of bugs in our test nets, but from what we can tell, we've fixed most of them. And also, like, just we're not going to be like the this very low latency chain at the get-go. We're actually going to have significant block times because of this complexity of the challenge here. But the good thing, again, they're all engineering optimization problems, right? These are not like mathematical or theoretical problems such as what every other chain faces with decentralization and scalability.
Makes sense. Yeah, because it kind of is more on that peer-to-peer layer of things rather than like the way the consensus is built. So pretty interesting. So Are there any like concrete things like, okay, we noticed like there was this category of bugs, so we executed this change just to like kind of visualize for people? Was there a major change in the P2P network layer of things that you could highlight, or just to like, yeah, give us an example basically?
Yeah, this is where I have to go back to our engineering team. Based
No
on what
worries.
I know,
Yeah.
like for example, we use libp2b, which is also done by
Mm,
Protocol Labs, the team behind Filecoin.
yeah.
And the good news is it's like it's becoming like this common library that other chains are also
Hmm.
using. But
Yeah.
the bad news is it's new, so you know
Yeah.
we failed at doing things in the right way at certain times. There were bugs in their code base. There were bugs in our code base, so like it was mostly like
Always.
just
Yeah.
it clawing away at the problem. Um, but yeah,
Right.
I'd have to ask if there were like major things that we had to change to overcome
Yeah.
major problems.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good question though. So maybe we can get a little follow up going post the session. But yeah, good questions. I'll just keep on watching the chat and Q&A as always for questions. I think a different category of discussion right now is even just what is it like to work in blockchain, and like to many people it feels like this totally different world. Does working in blockchain still feel like even compared to even your time at Coinbase, which is, to be honest, like mostly just a software company, does it feel like a traditional tech company? Is there a different culture, a different ethos? Do things feel just radical? I mean, people can only speculate, like me can only speculate what it's like to work at something like a layer one. What is it like? What does it feel like to you?
Yeah, it's really different. Like it is an open source software project, right? And
Mm,
so I think there's a lot of comparisons to be drawn there. I myself had never worked at an open source like an OSS project before.
mm,
So like for example, majority of our development is out there in the open. Like all of our code is open source. Majority of our engineering team's discussions happen in our public servers. Um,
right.
so like there's this very
Nice.
interesting notion of transparency. Obviously, that brings about its own unique set of challenges because at the same time we're also a company, right? We want to have our own
Ugh,
internal
gotta
culture and
move quick.
all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to move
I
quick.
imagine.
Another thing is like, who knows? But and we have like theories, not theories, but like certain strategic roadmaps of what happens to O1 Labs further out into the distant future. But like in our current model, which is we're like working on launching this blockchain, we're not going to grow to be like a 1,000-person company, right? That's never going to happen. So like, well, okay, how do you then think about well, and this is by the way my bias coming from Coinbase, where it was always about like growth and
Right.
like let's grow
Yeah.
faster, yada. So like
Yeah.
put that aside. It's very different, and it's both challenging, but also kind of like this breath of fresh air in terms of like look, we're all like working on this really cool problem and really interesting project, and we're all intellectually invested in this. And, yes, we have a pressure to launch and execute, but also, like we're doing this with a 7,000 person strong community. Like it's already like we're a big company in a way. And yeah, like it's just like we're all in it for, to see this to the long end. And yeah,
Yeah.
like let's just enjoy and have a good time.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, it's a great way to kind of start wrapping up, but I'm just gonna give it a little bit more. Checking the chat, but yeah, how's your next week or so looking for life? I
Yeah.
mean, what are you most looking forward to
It's
right now?
it's busy. It's busy until we launch this blockchain.
Oof.
So, which is a
Yeah,
couple months. We don't have that much left. But it's both super exciting and rather stressful as well because it's a lot of work that's like coming at this big launch moment. And the other irony is like the work on like it's like the end of phase 0 and phase 1 begins now, like after mainnet has launched because there's so
yeah,
much to do.
exactly.
So yeah, it's exciting, but also looking forward to hopefully start having a normal life here in the US with both the elections being over and hopefully the vaccine starting to roll out. It's going to take a while, but yeah, it's been an interesting year, but hopefully we're coming to the end of it.
Sure is. Yeah, it's been interesting is that's the right way to put it. So yeah, it's been quite a time. But yeah, I think it feels great to kind of call it here. Thank you so much, Emre. If anyone could, like, everyone who's kind of still here, could say thank you in the chat to Emre. This was awesome. So yeah, just thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for moderating, and thanks everyone for your great questions. Again, ping me or anyone else at the team community whenever you want. And yeah, thanks for having me.
It was awesome.